here to share on the life of Frederick Douglass. It is way overdue. And based on what I've heard shared, we emulate his legacy. So it's very good now to go into him and to honor him to take us to the next level. So again, my name is Juliet Adams. I'm the creator of the Frederick Press, which is an online platform that engages in thoughts. Also, the Frederick Press is the publisher of a 5-book series, and it is coined as political navigation. How do you navigate yourself in the US political landscape with the challenges of race and class? So here I go. Yesterday, so you're going to have an experience of looking at Frederick Douglass, how he was yesterday, how it's applicable to today, and how it's applicable to tomorrow. And what I've done with tomorrow, I've brought tomorrow into today. And so be prepared to think. This is a very thought-driven presentation, because that was Frederick Douglass. He was a man of thought. Okay, so Frederick Douglass, an American thought leader. That's how I contextualize him. He was born in 1818, and he lived until February the 20th, 1895. He was born a slave. So it's very important for us to contextualize the time that he was in, so that greater value would be given to what he did. And it also challenges us to look at where we are and what we have done and what we can, and what is still yet for us to do. He was a social reformer, abolitionist, orator, writer, and statesman. Remember, think about the time in 1818, slavery, Jim Crow, going into 1895. So that was the time, a very turbulent time for African Americans. And I want us to shift to and look at white America. White America was in turmoil because not all of white America agreed with slavery. So it was a tumultuous time, a turbulent time for both races. And so I coined him as the father of integrated thought. He wanted whites and blacks to be in harmony because he loved his country and he loved the people. And so his thought was not just for Black people. His thought was, white people understand that your mission, your objective, your success is tied up in the Black man's humanity. So look at us in all nakedness, so that together we can be successful. He defied thought, because in the period when he was growing up, the thought was that the enslaved lacked the capacity to function as individual citizens. Hence, they had to be enslaved and they had to be treated the way that they were treated. So today, our conversation is going to be a thought-infused conversation. And so you're going to be experiencing some very provocative thought. And I am going to demand, like Frederick Douglass, that at least I get a few questions, because that would be indicative that you have been thinking throughout the presentation. So the after presentation discussion is a barometer of the urgency for the focus of the deployment of thought, which seldom originates from political parties. I know that the US is extremely political, And therefore, you cannot look to a political party to empower you in this dimension. You have to be empowered, and that empowerment you infuse into whatever particular political party that you are affiliated with, associated with, or that you're a member of. And therefore, you have to be bold and tenacious to seek thought for yourself. And that is so attainable in the US society, which is still a democracy in its own unique way. So here's what Douglass said: where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither person nor property will be safe. And just like I shared with you, he wanted whites and blacks come together, white people or those individuals who were suppressing blacks, and even blacks who were suppressing other blacks, is that it isn't going to work. Where there's poverty, we're going to have some issues. And right now, as you know, here in the US, there is an issue of crime. Crime is an issue. So let's focus more on yesterday, during the time that he was alive. Douglass used opportunities wisely and with aggression. He defied and challenged thought of the status quo. That's where Douglass energy was. He hit it at the top. And there are examples. The 4th of July speech, according to Elton, he listened to that speech, and anyone who listened to that speech would cringe, because Douglass was extremely bold. He did not mince matters. And actually, the name of the speech was "What to the Slave." It's the 4th of July, and it was delivered in 1852. He went and he visited President Abraham Lincoln. He was uninvited and unannounced. That's why you cannot be timid when you embrace Frederick Douglass. He went to visit the president. He wasn't invited. And the time period is extremely important. As I go to this presentation, as you listen to me, you have to contextualize the time. And when he went to Lincoln, it wasn't like, I am with the president and, I'm this black man. He had some demands. And Douglass says, when you're interacting with power, you have to make demands. That's how power works. And 3 demands that he had for Lincoln was that slavery must be ended, African Americans must be enlisted in the Union Army, and that there must be citizenship must be granted to African Americans. And the slavery was started to be addressed with the Emancipation Proclamation. The enlistment of African Americans in the Union Army was achieved because of the Emancipation Proclamation. And eventually, not too long after, there was the achievement of citizenship for African Americans. His environment versus yours. I cannot overemphasize the importance of understanding the challenges and the danger in which Douglass functioned, in which he operated, in which he existed. And that did not deter him, because he did not allow his environment to define him. He defined himself in a very turbulent environment. Slavery was legalized. There was Jim Crow laws, high lynching rates. He was Black. You couldn't say, well, okay, maybe he looked kind of white, so he could have hid a little bit. No, he was Black. meaning a black father, white father, black mother. His appearance was all black, and that was his cause. That is what he advocated for. That was his advocacy. Um, However, in that environment, there were legislative victories. Look at the legislative victories. The 13th Amendment that abolished slavery in the United States. Then there was a 14th Amendment where African Americans, this was written and it had power because it meant you could have fought for it. African Americans as equal citizens. Then the 15th Amendment, which was 1870, this was during the life of Frederick Douglass. All males had a right to vote. Yes, women didn't as yet. Males had a right to vote. And you even had during that time, 1870, I mean, in the height of Jim Crow, you had 11 African Americans to Congress. Now, if you wanted to read a little bit more, you got to get my book, Democrat versus Republican and their evolving position on race. What was Douglass' brand? Agitation. Agitation. That was Douglass. You have to be able to speak up, speak out, knowing what the consequences is going to be. I mean, so you got to be careful when you speak. I mean, you just don't speak all the time. You got to choose your battles. You got to know, you have to have connections, network, but you have to speak up on issues. You have to be an advocate. He was extremely vocal. He was a believer in the power of the might of the pen. I heard one presenter, I don't know if it's James, who spoke about writing to your Congress representative. It is very important. We have absolutely no excuse in this time to start a process of doing such, of connecting. His brand, as I shared with you, was agitation. And that agitation is an energy release. It's an energy to agitate. You have to have energy. And when you agitate, you put energy into whatever that issue is, and you're able to get things going in terms of getting a solution. If you do not put energy, how do you expect it to go? Magically? You have to put energy, spiritual energy, physical energy, moral energy. There has to be an energy infusion. So what is agitation? Because when individuals hear agitation, they may feel, okay, I have to fight. No, agitation is an attempt to cause social or political change. You are either arguing, protesting, through activities. Now in 1877, imagine, this is 1877, Jim Crow era. He was appointed U.S. Marshal of DC by President Rutherford Hayes. He was the first African-American presidential appointment by the U.S. Senate. This is what Douglass said in Free Speech. To suppress free speech is a double wrong. It violates the right of the hearer as well as those of the speaker. Right now in the US, you pay a price to speak up. I am very outspoken. I don't expect the average person to be as outspoken as I am, but in our own way, like on this forum, individuals should seek a question that they want to ask, a simple question, because speaking up is a part of advocacy. You don't have to be extremely bold. You could be, mild in what you have to say, but speak, it has power. And the present conversation, so we are at the present. That was Douglass and what he did, his environment. So bringing Douglass to the present to us now, was the conversation. The conversation a Douglass conversation, a radical economic change. There is no question that the Black community needs that vibrancy of economics to get to the next level. There's so much going on. Individuals are now going to space, and African, and poverty is still an African American conversation. We need a Douglass voice to radically put that momentum forward economically. Cedar Hill should be symbolic of radical economic empowerment and change. Cedar Hill is the house that he lived in Washington, D.C. There ought to be a call for the Black community to consistently demand, without an apology, with a Douglass force and energy from government, the legislative branch, will they make the laws, the presidency, and the judiciary. Too many opportunities have fluttered away. And I am speaking that without an apology. I was at a farmer's market about 2 weeks ago on Capitol Hill. And so I took one of an African-American guy through some questions and answers. And he had to admit to me that the reason why African-Americans are not getting what they deserve is because they're not asking. That conversation, time would not permit me to have it here right now. But I'm just saying to you, when you become knowledgeable, when you look at what others have done, then you take on a no-nonsense approach and say, this is our demand, this is what we must get. That's the Douglass approach. So Douglass said the general sentiments of mankind, is that a man who will not fight for himself when he has the means to do so is not worth being fought for by others, and this sentiment is just. One of the presenters stated that some individuals, the Build Back Better bill, that some feel that it is dead and they're still working on it. The attitude there would be, how are individuals fighting for that bill that can empower others to fight also for it? Because others are going to say, well, maybe they really don't need it after all. Now, this is an issue that I addressed with Elton, and I told him that I feel very, very strongly about it. And so it's here, and I really would like individuals to pay attention, extra attention to what I have to say, because this is one example of a great opportunity that African Americans had, and they let it just go down. They did not fight for it. And that's a lost opportunity. Now, the Douglass Bicentennial Commission Act, and that HR 2989 is how they write bills. It's like the name of the bill, you know, the legislative name, HR 2989. And for me, it's a wrong that needs to be righted. It became law in November the 2nd, 2017. It was in celebration for Douglass's 200 years. The law established a commission. The name of the commission was the Frederick Douglass Bicentennial Commission. And this is what that law was for. It was to plan, develop, and carry out, as well as recommend to Congress, programs and activities to honor and celebrate the life of Frederick Douglass during the bicentennial anniversary of his birth in 2018. In general, commissions are funded directly by specific appropriations or through general agency appropriation. If money was given, very little money, it was not a funded It was not funded in the way it should be funded. The approximate amount that was stated should have been like about 2 million. Much, or if any money wasn't really given for that commission. And one of the reasons I know is that I was offered a position with that commission. The result, what happened is that nothing much was done, and that would have been a great year to present a massive economic plan to be passed by Congress. And you know the power of Congress. If Congress passes a bill and it gets the appropriation, that's it. That's what you're going to get. So tapping into the legislative process, where is your demand? Individuals must understand the power of the legislative process. And that is where the power of your vote comes in, because you have a vote, you have the power to make congressional leaders listen to you. Look at Douglass' life. Douglass was, as you know, you would put it, Douglass was a high hitter. He dealt with the elites, and he represented the man at the bottom to the individuals at the top. And legislation was extremely important. He knew it, he understood it. I showed you 3 legislation which were massive, which made massive progress to African Americans, the end of slavery, the citizenship, and men being able to vote. So the legislation process is extremely important. Where is your demand? What is it you want? Your thoughts. We challenge to have African Americans who have held powerful, now this is your thoughts. This is, I'm taking you through this experience for you to ask yourself, because you have a responsibility. What challenges of African Americans who have held or hold powerful political positions, from the presidency to the local official, have they maximized on Douglass's words and enacted even 1/10 of what he has done? If they haven't done it, what has been their inner self barriers? Why has there not been a Chisholm, Walker, Du Bois, Washington Economic Empowerment Act of 2022? Shirley Chisholm was unbought and unbossed. She was powered by the people. Is that a possible cause? A broken energy connection, that political leaders are not connecting with the ordinary individuals like they should, and hence there is not that representation. So my contribution to what Douglass has done, and I'm requesting your support. The Frederick Press, that's an online platform. It perpetuates thought. Things are thought. Things come out from thought, and our thoughts we need to start serious examination of how we think. In an environment of the degradation of thought, which is an American dilemma, we need thought leaders. 2 African Americans on thought. Hear what Martin Luther King said. Rarely do you find men who are willing to engage in hard, solid thinking. Nothing pains some people more than having to think, and it's getting worse. And this is from an African American. She was a programmer. She was an IT lady, an IT professional. Humans are allergic to change. They love to say, we've always done it that way. And the way that she rebelled against it is that she put her clock to go in an anti-clockwise direction. The Douglass attitude adoption, it's a new attitude. This presentation is being done so that it would be taken, so it is taken further, that we take from it and move in a direction to achieve more. So I put Patti LaBelle in it. And you know her song, The New Attitude. So you can hum along, and you can hum along remembering that I've got a new attitude. I've got the Douglass attitude. So Douglass combating a stationary repressive position. How was Douglass? What was he? How did he carry himself? He was fearless. He had a strong understanding of power, very, very strong. He understood power, and he had a strong relation with the wide community. We've got to give the wide community credit where credit is due. Douglass could have never, they would have killed him long time ago. They tried, but he would have been, he would not have lived as long as he lived if he did not have that relationship with the white community. He was extremely plain spoken. He was objective when he addressed issue. He embraced the like-minded. He had a diverse relationship. Douglas' relationship was not just with the US. Douglas' relationship was internationally. As African Americans, you've got to connect. So I applaud Elton and Elizabeth for reaching out to diverse communities. That's also very important. And he had a very strong philosophy on reform. You've got to struggle. Things are not easy. Those who profess the easy way, watch them. It's not real. And basically what he was saying is that they're cowards and very nearsighted. So in the future, what's the futuristic perspective of Douglass? So I am taking the future as to now, that we're building the future. It is dependent on our attitude now. So as you look ahead, it starts with you. It starts with each one of us, irrespective of age, because it's not about age, it's about your assignment. So Martin Luther King said, tomorrow is today. So I'll move on to the next. The blaring lesson, etched in self. You have to look at yourself. It has to start with you. Douglass knew slavery was not for him. He was born enslaved, and he fought his way out of enslavement. And therefore, one has to understand that life, your experience is going to be a struggle. You gotta fight. There's too many problems not to fight. And free speech, you must speak up. Speaking up is not easy. I mean, every day I'm confronted with challenges because I speak up, but I've resolved, this is it. I mean, this is me. I'm a Douglass girl. And there's a new mind frame. Remember, I spoke about thought. Ubuntu, that Zulu term, that African term, we're part of each other. We've got to start zeroing in on the power of that. I am what I am because we are what we're supposed to be. There's too much selfishness, there's too much hate, there's too much greed, and it's getting worse and worse. And I'm telling you from everyday experience, going out into the marketplace, we are self-destroying ourselves as a nation. And therefore, maybe there's where the African-American community can really blaze forward and show other communities, there's a way. We're going the Ubuntu way, the Ubuntu way. Okay, so a renewed and reformed attitude, the power of free speech. Douglass said it very clear, power concedes nothing without a demand. Those who are in power, regardless if they're Black or white or yellow or pink, you're not going to get anything from them without a demand. When Douglass met with Abraham Lincoln, he knew he was meeting with power, he made his demands. When you talk about the president, you should talk in terms of demands. When you talk about the vice president, you should talk in terms of demands. That is part of the language of power. You have to make demands. You're not getting what you're getting because you're not making the demands as you should collectively. So power concedes. That's what Douglass said. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. You don't ask, you won't get. That's a spiritual concept also. find out what many people will quietly submit to, and you will find out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. So here we come to the Gifted and Magical series, my contribution. Here, the Gifted and Magical series is a political toolkit, and I invite you to join me to becoming a New York bestseller in the month of March, deploying Ubuntu, that the blessings that I receive, I can radiate back to you and support your business activities. Then here's another one of the books, Democrat versus Republican. I encourage you to, if you just get it online, because it gives you some interesting facts about the Democratic and the Republican Party. Midterms are coming up, and it's not going to be a pretty affair. What I've seen politically is that individuals on the ground, individuals are fighting against each other, and the political status quo is encouraging it. So here we are fighting against each other, and at the end of the day, you'll get nothing, and the political elites, they always get what they want. And you have to be able to see through that and take the responsibility and create your own destiny, and that for your community. So that's a Democrat versus Republican. And like I said, it gives you some fascinating facts about both political parties. So thank you very much for your support. I look forward to your collective efforts as I continue on, and please feel free to either visit the Frederick Press and put your email contact where I'll follow up with other information, or you can put it in the chat where I can retrieve it. And so I leave with you provocative words from Shirley Chisholm. And I would like you to meditate on her words. And this is what she said: most Americans won't become involved in economic and political change until something brings the seriousness of the situation home to them. Unless they're threatened, why should they change a system that has been fairly beneficial for a large number of people? It is going to be the have-nots, the Black, brown, red, yellow, and white, who do not share the good life, who somehow arouse the conscience of the nation and thus create a conscience in Congress. And here is the study of Frederick Douglass at Cedar Hill, which is his home. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your support. Any questions?
Thank you for that, Juliet. Amazing. That was really amazing. And I really appreciate your participation. And we are running short of time. So what I'll do, because of that, not taking anything away from your presentation, we're going to move to a round table.
Juliet, can you stop sharing the slides?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Move to a round table.
Sure. Thank you.
To consider the magnitude of what you stated, unless you've got, let me try to take a couple of questions, but in 30 minutes, I want to get to our round table and get to the valid discussions of things that I want to share with us. But power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, never will. But go ahead. Any questions, please? Quickly.
I do have a comment. One of the things that, first of all, that was an excellent presentation. I would also like to highlight one of the, well, I got several that I really love about the 1852 speech. But one of the things that really stands out to me about that speech is, just like you said, it is so relevant to today. One of the issues that we have today are the people who call themselves Christians. And I do want to say call themselves Christians. And I say that because so many people who call themselves Christians today simply do not subscribe to what Jesus has told us in the Bible. That's a reality. And I'm not here to preach to anybody. But Frederick Douglass in his 1852 speech, had the same comment. He said the American church is guilty when viewed in connection with what it is doing to uphold slavery, but it is superlatively guilty when viewed in connection with its ability to abolish slavery. The sin of which it is guilty is one of omission as well as commission. And I see the same thing in our society today as we deal with voter suppression. The church is in a position to combat this in an efficient way because of the numbers. But what we find is the church, for the most part, being silent, which is an omission, and in some cases actually speaking on in support of these things, such as voter suppression, which obviously hurts us as African Americans the greatest. It impacts everybody, but it hurts us the greatest. So what are your thoughts about the church today?
Lester,
Oh, sure.
rather than move to that question,
Oh, I'm sorry.
let us move to the round table. On the round table, we're going to share and show and discuss a variety of different issues and concerns. And I want to hear from each of us in a collective manner. And keep in mind that sharing the spirit of Frederick Douglass, it's an issue of collaboration, discussion, as well as projection about the issues, as well as how do we bond and pull people together. We're not trying to abuse the spirit of people's perspectives. We are just trying to create a harmony of intent that will help us empower ourselves, empower our future, and give us the collective victories that we seek. And so with that being said, if that's okay, I mean, no disrespect intended. This is an important time right here. We have in the chair, we want to have Juliet Adams, who will speak from the Frederick Press. We want to hear from Grover Jackson from his book author position. We also want to hear from you, Lester, in your book author position. And I'm here.
And Jerry's here too.
And also, well, just make it collective. Thinking in mind that, we have a responsibility. Each person was put here on earth for a collective agenda, an agenda that God has placed on your heart to be who you are required to be. But understanding again that no, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, it never will. So if you want something, you better ask or demand it or require it. And there are people who know what's right, but they won't be willing to do it unless somebody steps to them, unless somebody asks from them. So this is important now, and we're in the position of great achievement right now. We can do great things as a collective group of people. So the point of that matter is, in terms of right now, our community, we need better jobs, we need better income, we need better housing, and we need to eliminate the restrictions of racism, the restrictions of position, the restrictions of economy, and this is important because, and not that we're trying to slight anybody. I've heard, my pilgrim friends have told me, why are you having an event about Black folk for minority agendas? People have challenged me about that. And I say to them, listen, there are people in my community who don't have the confidence to pursue business. They don't have the understanding and the courage to face their conditions properly. And so I'm here to help them find the courage, to help them find the tenacity, to help them find an understanding, and also to bring them into a position to ask. Because back in pre-era terms, when you went before the king and you never made a request, how's the king supposed to hear you? If you went before the throne of what's right and you mumbled, stumbled, falled, and hauled, and you didn't, how are you supposed to get what you need? But so my agenda is to bring the people of condition and circumstance into a position to say, well, I need a better job. I'd like a raise. You treat my counterpart better than you do me because he's making more money, putting in fewer hours, and I have to drive 10 hours. And I'm tired of being the last hired and first fired. And so, these things like this, and it doesn't mean that you have to speak the King's English, but people who are prone and conditioned, and because everybody's got to face the judgment bar. And, and there are people who are saying, listen, whatever happens, I've got to do the right thing. Now, those people that don't want to do the right thing, well, you can't do anything with them anyway. They're willing to break the law and do whatever. So I bring all of us together to talk now, to talk and to discuss and to bring into an understanding. If you will, tell me the strategies we'll start there. Tell me the strategies that you have found to be effective when it comes to solving issues of social concern, when it comes to you asking and requesting for the right cause. Now, understand, and you make a valid point, Lester, that this is something that we expect churches to do, but sometimes the churches don't. It doesn't mean they're wrong. It doesn't mean they won't, but it means that sometimes you have to be the voice. Sometimes you have to take the stand. So I put that to anyone that would care to respond. What strategies have you found to be effective when it comes to, responding and making demands on communities and organizations and people in charge to get them to do what you need them to do? Floor is open. I can't hear you, Lester.
Oh, nice.
I would simply say that advocacy has been my life. I have been very involved for over 40 years in advocating for the things that I know I needed, the things that I know hurt people, those people who are not in a position in many cases for them to advocate on their own. And I pointed out in my presentation some of the effective ways of advocating, and I'll just recite or restate that some of them include sitting on boards, on bond oversight committees, and putting yourself in a position whereby you can confront, complain, but also at the same time make changes. Because when you sit on boards, you're responsible for developing policy. And if something is going to happen, it's going to happen through you. And you're the one who can also stop those things from happening that can hurt people. So if you need a library in a certain area and you sit on a particular board, then you can assist in making it happen. I'll just make one quick comment about how effective advocating can be. I said earlier that a couple of times a year, at least, 40 or 50 of us from California go and we to Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, and we advocate for low-income housing and food insecurity in particular. Where there was a time when we went and we only advocated for low-income housing. So I had a strong interest in food insecurity, but I had to convince a very strong lobbying group with over 80 years of experience why they needed to change and not just advocate for low-income housing because we're talking about the same people. But I was able to do that. So now the effort involves both low-income housing and food insecurity. And there's lots of other examples I can give you, but sitting on boards, just recognizing what you see in the community, talking to people and observing what's happening with children, for example. Knowing that there's a high suspension and expulsion rate in school systems, even if you don't have a child amongst African American kids, even if you don't have a child in the system, you should be concerned about it. And that's what I've done. So there's all kinds of, it comes down to advocacy. You have to advocate. And will you be looked on in many cases as being in a positive light in many cases? No, because organizations and systems don't like to change.
Exactly.
You know, so you're not going to always be viewed in a positive state. But let me say a follow-up real quick about that point. Some of the same people who have opposed me, I was advocating for kids at this particular high school and against unfair policies. And every time I would publicly oppose these policies, the assistant principal was always there to defend it. Well, the assistant principal retired, and I was shocked to get a handwritten letter from her after she had retired, thanking me for being an agent of change and for working hard on behalf of those kids. The point that I'm making here is that we cannot be deterred by the attitudes and responses that we get when we advocate, because it was that woman's job to oppose me.
Okay, let me make this comment and then I'll hear from other people. And you have all followed the news. The former coach for Miami Dolphins, Brian Flores, he filed a lawsuit against the NFL. And because they took some unfair practices with him, he was willing to lose his job just to be heard regarding minority coaching. And so much so that you've seen a swing now of more coaches, minority coaches who've stepped into the league. I think that's amazing. I think that he took an incredible risk with that, but look at what it can do. So the floor is open. Tell me, and please limit your comments to a few minutes because we want to hear from everybody. So please, open up. Tell us.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly share. I think an area that's lacking is when we assist low income or individuals who are in need of a service or in a disadvantaged group, we're not empowering them to become leaders in their group. So we keep fueling the energy and resources back to that group, when if we were to empower the very individuals that we're assisting, they in turn can assist others, and it would be a rippling effect. So I would like someone to share on how it's done, if they have done it, and how that should move forward. The second point too is, Lester, you spoke about sitting on boards and being involved in leadership legislative process. Individuals have to be taught, and that's the reason why I wrote the book, because as familiar as you are with the political system, it is not as friendly to a lot of individuals. So let me go back to the first issue in terms of how are you empowering those in the community when you assist them to be able to help their communities. So I think, Lester, that would be good for you and anyone else.
Okay, if the question is directed to me, then I will quickly answer. I don't want to hog up all of the time. But I mentioned that one of the organizations that I sit on as a board member is called Family Resource and Referral. And our whole objective is to empower low-income people. That's the whole objective. Now, in some cases, we're talking about the same people who also are in low-income housing. But low-income people are all of these people. So we have all kinds of programs that help to get people engaged, how to advocate, how to obtain the skills that they need to be able to become self-sufficient. And we have seen tremendous progress in helping people to rise above the circumstances that they were in, because some people move on. Some people, and it's a good, really good thing, good feeling to have people come back and show us that what we've done is working, because they're no longer in public housing. They're no longer in need of the services that we provide. So I guess the thing is that for me, I don't personally have those skills myself to teach people other than the models that I use, but I work and sit on a board that does, to ensure that those things happen.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Lester. Come on now, let's engage now, because I'm talking about strategies. I mean, you know, when you first confront an item, it requires the courage to confront it. You have to step to the plate, and there's risk involved. I mean, you know, the risk are job loss. The risk is isolation, embarrassment, the risk of personal persecution. I mean, when you challenge an issue that you know is wrong, you know, that needs to be heard, you know, you've got to be willing to face those conditions. And it does require some personal, you know, animus. It does require some, you know, some capacity, you know, I mean, and that's the true fact about it, you know, and, you know, but quite frankly, and I think someone said that today, it was about, you know, you stand up for people and then you turn around and there's nobody behind you that you're standing up for. That's no good. That's no good. You're standing up for a group of people, and the people that you were standing up to protect, defend, and support have gone because they're afraid. You know, so the point of the matter is, and who knows, it's the right thing to do, but the point of it is that collectively, you know, when it comes to the right thing, you know, courage. It requires the courage to step forward, the courage to make a demand, and no power concedes nothing without a demand. Power concedes nothing without a demand. So I guess what I'm trying to understand and get to, you know, there are ways to pursue strategies that will help us create platforms, because this is the time now. This is the time. We're sitting on a platform of great prospect, great promise. I mean, look at, oh my goodness, Stacy Mollis. Here you are, Guyana now is about to be one of the richest Caribbean islands, you know, in the world because of its oil reserves. And so, you know, somebody there had the good sense to say, well, why don't we put this out for competitive bid? And they challenged the people who owned the capacity to do so. That takes courage. So what if I can get any one of us and all of us to collectively consider, how do I assimilate the courage to challenge? What should I do as a personal endeavor to be a little more, show more moxie? Because that's what God wants from us. You know, I mean, you know, you could settle for a status quo, and at the end of the day, you may have settled and and captured maintenance, stayed where you are. But if you can do more for your community because of simple sacrifice, it will be worth its benefit. So comments, criticism, discussions, please. I can't hear you, Grover.
Over, right? You're still on mute.
Yeah, who put me on mute? I'm never muted.
We might have muted everybody because of voice.
Anyway, let me share this from a different a different perspective. In my life, I've been around a lot of folks, and mostly in the majority community. I lived in Miami for 10 years. I was at a minority, well, a Black church, but the pastor was a person who, well, I got to tell a story, then you can understand it. My philosophy was I was not a believer at the time. And I know the Lord led me from New York to Houston to Miami for a reason. So after riding around for 6 months, just enjoying the beaches and the sunshine, I asked the cousin who lived there about a church. He said, yeah, that's a sophisticated church over there. And I had no idea what he meant by sophisticated church, but I wanted to go visit that sophisticated church because my philosophy, and brother, you can understand this and you can laugh at this one. My philosophy about preachers was they wanted to ride in big cars and smoke big cigars and that's it. You know, to show you how naive I was. So anyway, I went to this church and 600 people there. The pastor preached the sermon, and he, at the end of the service, he came to the back door and greeted all the members. I'm thinking, okay, because he wanted to meet visitors, and I said, well, 600 people, no way he gonna know I'm a visitor now. And sure enough, I got to the back door. Oh, where are you visiting from? Are you living in the city? Bottom line was, he didn't smoke, he didn't drive a big car. He had a house full of kids. So that shut my my thinking down. But fast forward, I left Miami, moved to Atlanta, and we became a member of a majority church, huge church, matter of fact. I became the first Black deacon there. In fact, deacons that I served with used to tell me about how they used to run around and block the doors when the Blacks was trying to enter back in the late 60s. So, but the point was, I'm not a radical in terms of my philosophy, but I do listen and I remember everything I hear. I shouldn't say everything, but most of what I hear, so I can use it when I come back around. So I've learned a lot just from listening and in small groups with people who share their philosophies and on politics and people about Black people. All they want to do is collect welfare and checks and whatnot. But I challenge them on that in small groups, not to change their mind, but to let them know there's a different thought process out there and share some information that they're not privileged to or even thought about. And most of them, because the way I approach things, they understood and they respect me because I've known most of these people now 20 years or so. So they know I'm not one to shout there's fire in the building when there's no fire. So I use, and oftentimes, it's all start with Sunday school lessons, you know, and you can imagine a majority church here in Atlanta, Georgia, everything surrounds politics, including our pastor. But I've learned to respect him and his belief. I can't change it about politics. I can't change that, and I would not try. So, but I can challenge him on things that are not relevant to. So to get back to the story, Joy, would you please go? I'm on the conference, please. So to make a long story short, people in Sunday school classes make the comments out of context, and I challenge, particularly, you know, Martin Luther King was a what the word was. They don't use communist, but they use words that are not true, and so you have to challenge when they come out with statements not true, to let them know you're not, dummy, and you heard what they said, and to correct them. You don't have to argue about it. You don't have to jump up and shout and scream about it. You don't have to march about it, but you can share, and one at a time, you can get people to understand that people are all the same. They like change. They want change for the better. They want to be part of that change, and they want to participate in that change. And if we can sit back and just let people say what they want, act what they want, do what they want, then we're not advocacy of change. And we need to be part of that, as Brother Les mentioned.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Grover. Anybody else have a comment about where we're at? Because at the end of the day, I want us all, because believe it or not, and God has a destiny for all of us, and there are envelopes that we need to be pushing today. Things that, I mean, even to be at the top of your game now, and in business, to be at the top of your game is political. It's political, and you're going to have to play the game, and you have to play it by the rules. But there are games being played against you. I mean, it's real. I remember playing golf with two Pilgrim friends of mine, neighbors actually. And, and we played, and as we began to hit strokes, I came to realize that they weren't playing each other, they were playing me. Because it came down, they came down to you do whatever you have to do, but don't let him win. No, really. I mean, that was how it was. Do whatever you have to do, and we'll team up, but don't let him win. Don't let him win. So I mean, and that's a reality. That's a reality. And you would be simple-minded to think that is not being handed to you that way. But keep your cool. You play your game and you do the best you can do under any circumstance. And also win, because people need to see you winning. They need to understand that you can win, and they need to receive you as a winner. Receive you as a winner. Because if you can change their perspective about that to them, then you have transformed everything in their definition. Everything in their definition.
Another point, speaking of corporate America, I have a story similar to that, not about winning necessarily, but about principle. The company, we used to have family dinners, and all the families in the areas come to the dinner, and it was company sponsored, and they had a prayer. So the personnel director knew I was a Christian, so he asked me if I'd bring the prayer. I said, sure. So a week goes by, and coming up to the dinner, he said, could I see the prayer? And I don't usually write my prayers out. And I knew where he was coming from. I mean, I don't usually write my prayers out. So I just said, no, but if you want me to, I can write down what it generally consists of. What he was looking for, don't use the word Jesus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, really. And so after I gave him the prayer that I wrote out, he read it. Could you change a few things? Could you change the word Jesus? And so the principle is, I said, hey, that's who I believe in. That's who I put my trust in. And I'm not going to deny him by taking his name out. So if you want me to bring the prayer at the dinner, I'll do it. But I'm going to mention what I put in the prayer. Otherwise, get somebody else.
Right.
I mean,
yes, hello.
Yeah, I stood up and
How are you,
I didn't do the prayer. I didn't do the prayer, but hey, I earned his respect.
Good for you. Good for you. You stood up to them.
I am here. I was around the
Jerry.
Finally.
outside?
Jerry, can we hear you?
Okay.
Do you want to join the conversation?
I'm leaving at about 3:30ish, but you need to.
So but the point of this is that we all need to find ourselves in a position of defying circumstance, defying conditions, and being in a position that we can stand up. Now, this is an interesting element, and this goes to the simple to the complex. Okay, now, and I dare to question and challenge you. I was in Atlanta. Last time I was in Atlanta, that was about 20 years ago, I think. And I was on the subway in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was funny because there were these, maybe I can't use that description, but I was on subway, and there were these, how can I put it?
Individuals.
Well, there were these individuals, of course. And there was a young boy. And these young men, women, if you can say it that way, young men, women, they were physically attempting to challenge the young boy. And, the young boy just going and coming like he would normally do. And so, this was years ago. And so, what am I to do? And I said to myself, I can't let these men, women challenge this young boy, because he's got a right just like they did. And so I said, hold up, leave this young fella alone and let him come and go like he wants to, because he's got a right to. I don't know what your plans are, and I don't care, because I mean, he's got a right to be his own man. And so I don't know what they felt about that, but all I know was that whatever lot, I'm going to defend this young man. I'm going to defend this young man because he's got a right to be, and so it happened in a moment's notice. So I guess they were caught by my response. And so they left him alone. Things went the way they did. But the point there, because every day of your life, you're going to be faced with the condition that you're going to have to stand up. You have to stand up and be heard, stand up and make your point. And if you're standing on right ground, what's it say? The Lord will fight your battles. The Lord will fight your battles. You got to trust him. You got to trust him to do it. Fight your battles.
Yeah,
So,
and I this is me. Can you hear me, Nancy?
yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we had so many phone calls, and I know we're being recorded, but I think it's important to say, why are y'all doing a Black History Month? And we had companies that were selling African products, saying that, you know, we're white owned, but we have a Black customer base, but why don't you be more inclusive? I had a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails about this event. I've never had this for any other event. So any thoughts about this?
Well,
I think everybody should be at a Black History Month and listen to stories about Frederick Douglass and
look at
everything.
it this way, because
but I think this is important because this is a new fight that people want to cancel Black History Month. Why do you all have a whole month?
But I need you to all understand that you have a right to be. One, you got a right to own your own business. You got a right to stand up for yourself. You got a right to be forceful about who you are. And importantly, you've got a right to defend and define yourself. No more do we rely on other people to define us for myself. You know, I think I was, and I'll let people speak. I think I was at a meeting recently where somebody wanted to speak for me.
Yeah, I know.
I don't need you to speak for me. Go on, Miss Wood. Miss Wood, tell us. Miss Ernestine, got something to say?
No, it was me this time.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's take that, Claire, as an opportunity to extend your business. You use those individuals that called and were complaining about what you've done so well. We are doing, you know, businesses, and you may be a white business, but you're promoting our products. And so you're welcome to speak if you'd like to be a part of the business part.
I agree.
You might find a sponsor out of that group. Just a different way.
We even had somebody say he does business in where's it, Cameroon. He said it's a pilgrim fellow. He does business in Cameroon, and he said, you know, I don't ascribe to minority business. I don't think there's a place for people who do business with other minorities. I said, you know what? I understand you're saying that.
That's right.
You know, and I understand your need and reason to do that. But you see, I come from a different place. Where the people in my community need my support. They need my articulation and my perspective. And see, and I would be remiss if I didn't stand in that corner, defend and protect the people that I grew up with and for. I mean, and I'm sorry, no disrespect. You do you, and I'll do me.
Well, I just said that there are 12 months in the year, and everybody's included in this group, and God knows everybody's included. White, black, blue, green, everybody's included. And but once a year, in the month of February, the month of love, Valentine's Day, we will host Black History Month. This is our business, and this is our stance on it. And that's the end of it.
Well, more than that, I think it's a collective unity. I mean, right now, I think African Americans represent almost a 10 to 15 trillion dollar economic foundation. That means American minorities spend 10 to 15 trillion dollars a year. Trillion dollars a year. Now, if tomorrow our community decided we want to do business collectively with our community, imagine what kind of impact that would have on the larger audience. Not to say that's what would happen, but you know, many of the products and services that we use, once upon a time, we would buy them all from our own people. but that might not be the case. But if we could, what would it represent? It would mean an economic strength and power that we can build great things on.
All right.
And
So
let me just say, let me share this. Elton, with the gentleman or the company that said they do business in Africa or the Cameroon, if they're so set on feeling, I mean, that's a minority to them. So why are they so set on trying to do business there? And
we were surprised.
I couldn't understand that at all. I asked the same question. Okay, so you're doing business in Cameroon. Okay, then why are you doing business exclusively in Cameroon? And then you understand their value. You understand the value and what they represent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Anyway, we just had a conversation. Jerry, we haven't heard from you at all day. Do you want to say something?
Your mic has been distorting almost the whole day. Can you hear, Jerry Bird? Yeah, okay. No comment. Okay.
All right.
So point being, now,
Reginald had a question.
you have a question, Jerry? I mean, Reggie.
And the CBD team is coming on, so stay with us. We have one more speaker.
Go, Reggie.
Go ahead.
Thank you. It's not really a question, it's more or less a comment. I think a lot of times businesses forget that Black history is also American history.
Yeah.
And that business in general was built directly or indirectly off of the sweat, blood, and tears of the African American population. I think oftentimes that is forgotten. And it is good that what we do today doesn't just emphasize that we have a place at the table, and it's to remind people that we should continue to keep a place at the table.
Sure. That's right.
That's all I got to say on that one.
That's perfect. So with that in mind, our collective unity has power. Our collective unity has purpose. Our collective unity has capacity. I mean, and we dare not take anything away from it. And so what needs to happen? Is that Jerry?
Yeah.
Jerry, please. You're killing me here, man.
He's trying.
Okay, so our collective